April 1st, 1998.
In Arkansas, the judge hands down her decision. Case dismissed. The president's lawyer was low-key.
And I'm very pleased, and the opinion speaks for itself.
The president's spokesman was restrained.
The president shared the news with the First Lady after he got it from Mr. Bennett, and I think both of them were pleased to get the news.
As for the Paula Jones team,
I'm shocked. I'd be less than honest if I didn't tell you I was completely blown away by this decision.
And Monica Lewinsky's lawyer was, well, Monica Lewinsky's lawyer.
I think the bottom line on it is that we're still in jeopardy and the matter is hardly resolved.
Which would appear to put all the focus now on Kenneth Starr's investigation. Tonight.
From ABC News, this is Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
In a nation largely predisposed not to care very much about the president's alleged sexual escapades, today's news came like a legal benediction. The Paula Jones case has been dismissed. Whether or not he ever did any or all of the things that she claimed was not even addressed. The judge found that even if the charges were true, Ms. Jones suffered neither the professional nor the emotional damage that she claimed. White House reaction has been low-key. But there are some logical questions that flow out of today's decision which could generate some real optimism among the president's supporters. That deposition he gave in the Paula Jones case, the one in which he reportedly denied any sexual relationship with Monica Lewinsky, does that now go away with the Paula Jones case? And does the dismissal of the Jones case essentially undermine whatever charges Kenneth Starr may be developing against the president? No, say sources inside Starr's office. Dismissal of the sexual harassment case by Paula Jones does nothing to eliminate possible charges of perjury or obstruction of justice against the president. Even so, if only from a political point of view, this was a good day for the president. More now from Nightline correspondent Chris Bury.
The president's first reaction on the telephone at the end of another long day in Africa was to ask his lawyer, Bob Bennett, if he was playing an April Fool's joke. Mr. Clinton's spokesman did his best to understate what seems a stunning victory for the president.
I think the president is pleased to receive the vindication he's been waiting a long time for.
The president's staff was under orders to avoid gloating, and even lawyer Bob Bennett was uncharacteristically low-key.
We were very strong on the facts and very strong on the law, and I think it is clearly the right decision, and I think Judge Wright should be complimented on her courage to make the right decision, notwithstanding all of the political atmosphere surrounding the case.
Tonight, the Paula Jones camp conceded it was completely caught off guard by today's ruling.
In fact, the sad fact is now there's never going to be a determination about who is telling the truth, Paula Jones or President Clinton.
He presented himself to me in a very unprofessional manner.
The case has dragged on for nearly 4 years, since Paula Jones first claimed at a convention of political conservatives that then-Governor Clinton had a state trooper bring her to a hotel room and asked her to perform oral sex. But U.S. District Judge Susan Weber Wright, in unusually sharp language, ruled Jones has failed to demonstrate that she has a case worthy of submitting to a jury. The judge rejected all 3 of Paula Jones's arguments. On her claim of sexual harassment, Wright found Jones has not demonstrated any tangible job detriment or adverse employment action for her refusal to submit to the governor's alleged advances.
The first claim was quid pro quo, which in English means put out or get out. And courts have always said you have to prove that you suffered in some way, a demotion, a firing, a layoff. Paula Jones could never prove that, and that was always the weakest part of her case.
Paula Jones also lost on another critical point, that she had suffered a hostile work environment because of the alleged encounter.
Hostile work environment was probably the closest call in this case, because if true, this was a very ugly advance. But the judge said, look, this was a one-time incident if it occurred at all, so it wasn't severe or long-lasting enough to merit having a whole trial about.
Judge Wright also rejected an argument that Governor Clinton's conduct was criminal, so outrageous that Paula Jones suffered emotional distress. Although the governor's alleged conduct, if true, may certainly be characterized as boorish and offensive, even a most charitable reading of the record in this case fails to reveal a basis for a claim of criminal sexual assault.
Paula Jones' biggest problem was that she could never prove that anything happened to her as a result of Bill Clinton's supposed overtures to her. And Judge Wright today said, look, no harm, no foul. He didn't do anything to you that had any impact on your job or your life, so I'm throwing the case out.
Tonight, in a statement, Paula Jones's lawyers criticized the ruling, saying the court decided the case on technical legal grounds and that an appeal is very likely. Even so, that works very much to the president's advantage, according to legal analyst Stuart Taylor.
I think this reduces to almost zero the chance that he will have to stand trial in the Paula Jones case while in office.
Because the appeals will drag on.
Because the appeals would take so long in the normal course of affairs that you'd be near the end of the Clinton presidency, and once you're near the end of the Clinton presidency, you might as well wait a little bit longer till he's out of office.
For President Clinton, today's ruling is more than a solid legal victory. It is also a huge political windfall. Now the question is how it will change the dynamics of the ongoing White House battle with independent counsel Kenneth Starr. Tonight, the president's defenders on Capitol Hill wasted no time in pouncing on today's decision.
Kenneth Starr is now left investigating the veracity of testimony in a civil case which has been dismissed, discredited, and no longer before justice.
There's a legal argument, the fruit of the poison tree. There may be now a political argument about that I think what you can count on the President Clinton's people saying is this was a case brought for political reasons. The fact that it was thrown out by a judge would seem to confirm that. Without the Paula Jones case, there wouldn't have been a Monica Lewinsky case. And I think the White House is going to use that.
Tonight, independent counsel Kenneth Starr insisted the ruling would not make any difference to his investigation.
We've been given jurisdiction to investigate whether criminal offenses were committed, and it's independent of the civil litigation. So we're going on about our work.
Monica Lewinsky and her lawyer surfaced to say her future remains very much in doubt.
I think the bottom line on it is that we're still in jeopardy and the matter is hardly resolved. We're still concerned. Certainly not going out to celebrate, but I think it reflects common sense and a good approach to this.
For all the obvious relief at the White House, the president, of course, still faces significant legal hurdles and the possibility of impeachment hearings.
Perjury is still perjury, and obstruction of justice is still obstruction of justice. If Ken Starr could prove that or offer a lot of evidence for that, he still has a strong case to make. But I think the burden on him now is much greater. The hurdle is higher.
Tonight, Paula Jones herself had little to say except through her lawyers that she is, quote, very disappointed. Though Jones has lost her case and any claim to hundreds of thousands of dollars, her lawsuit has already succeeded in greatly embarrassing the president and in starting a chain of events that continue to keep him in genuine legal jeopardy. This is Chris Bury for Nightline in Washington.
We've conducted another one of our instant telephone polls. The ABC News poll conducted tonight finds that 61% of those questioned supported the judge's ruling. Only 30% opposed it. On the question of whether independent counsel Kenneth Starr should continue his investigation, respondents were split just about down the middle. 48% said yes, 50% said no. As for the president's job approval rating, it remains high at 66%, despite the fact that 61% of those polled think that the president has engaged in a pattern of sexual misconduct. When we come back, a former independent prosecutor, a lawyer who's covering the Starr investigation, and a former senior advisor to the president.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Canon.
Joining us now from our Washington studios, Michael Zeldin. He was an independent counsel from 1992 until 94. Stuart Taylor is a senior writer for the National Journal and a contributor to Newsweek. He joins us from Washington as well. And George Stephanopoulos was a senior advisor to President Clinton. He is now a panelist on ABC's This Week with Sam Donaldson and Cokie Roberts. George, short term, it's obviously good news for the president. What about long term?
Well, long term, in the very long term, it could be great news, Ted, because this really helps. You know, we heard a lot about the president's legacy. In the long term, this wipes away any question of guilt in this particular case. The medium term is where the problem is for the president. What is Ken Starr going to find out, and what is Congress going to do about it? And we don't know the answer to that yet.
Now, Stuart, let me go right to you and ask you whether you accept what George just said. Does this really wipe out any question of the president's guilt? I thought it just wiped out the question of whether there had been any sexual harassment.
The judge made no finding as to whether Paula Jones or Bill Clinton is lying or telling the truth. It's a purely legal ruling. In that sense, it says even if he did everything Paula Jones says he did, that doesn't give her a right to file a lawsuit. I think where I would disagree with George is I think the medium term determines the long term. If Kenneth Starr can prove that Bill Clinton obstructed justice yesterday, I'm not sure that, that the judge throwing out the case in which justice was obstructed today wipes that off the slate. I think it does not.
Michael,
I agree with that.
Go ahead. Michael?
Well, I think what we have now is a case that has been dismissed and a prosecutor who's looking at the allegation of perjury in a civil case which has been dismissed, where the allegations giving rise to it were previously determined to be not germane. And so it seems to me that really Ken Starr is in the hot seat. Judge Weber Wright, a Republican, did a courageous thing, which was to rule technically on the law and correctly. Now Judge Starr has to determine whether or not, as a sound use of his prosecutorial judgment, he is going to follow suit. I think that's what he should do. I think that's what most prosecutors would do in this situation.
What you were suggesting is that because the deposition was given, I mean the deposition in which the whole Monica Lewinsky name and incident came up was given in the Paula Jones case, and the Paula Jones case has been dismissed, that therefore everything else should fold away too?
As a technical legal matter, it doesn't. As a matter of sound judgment, you have to ask yourself as a prosecutor, am I serving the public trust? Am I doing the job that I was hired to do, which is to exercise good judgment when I pursue a criminal matter with respect to a dismissed civil case involving Monica Lewinsky, when the judge previously ruled that Monica Lewinsky was not germane to that case, giving rise to the question of was there even a material misstatement. It seems to me under those circumstances, Judge Starr would be advised to move very cautiously before he either sought an indictment or referred something to the House of Representatives for articles of impeachment.
Stuart Taylor, you and I were talking about this before, and I suggested that it might be analogous to say that this was like someone stealing a bag of what he thought was money from a Brinks truck and opening it up and finding there was nothing but paper inside and saying, what are you coming after me for? I didn't steal anything of value.
Right, and I think I said, Ted, that that's a good analogy, if not a great analogy. I think we need to remember a couple of things. First, the weaknesses in Paula Jones's ability to prove damage after whatever happened in the hotel room have been apparent since she filed her lawsuit almost 4 years ago. The judge has now ruled as a legal matter that those weaknesses mean the suit shouldn't go to trial. That's one judge in Arkansas who may be reversed on appeal. The question whether the House of Representatives should consider the evidence as to the president's conduct to be ground for impeachment is affected as a legal matter, I think, and should be affected as a public opinion matter, not at all by what the judge thinks on the technical requirements of sexual harassment law.
Except, Stuart, what you have then, by your proposition, is the House of Representatives investigating for possible articles of impeachment an allegation or allegations of perjury in a case that has been dismissed that is not material in the first instance to that very case. I don't think that that is an impeachable offense legally, and I don't think that that serves the public trust, which is what the president is there to do and what the independent counsel is there to do, make sure that the public good is served. So I just don't see that as anything other than a political gesture. And I don't think Ken Starr should be about the politics of this situation, but rather only about the law. And the law here doesn't, the law here just doesn't merit prosecutorial continuation.
George, help us bridge the gap here a little bit. I mean, knowing what you know of Ken Starr and also knowing what you know of the political will of Congress, you think it's going to go forward?
I think Ken Starr will certainly go forward, and I think the Congress is praying that he waits until after the 1998 elections. I think they're not against dealing with this if Ken Starr has a credible report. What they don't want is it to come to them before November, because the Republicans are in control now. They don't want anything to upset what would historically be maintaining control in November. So I think they hope that all of this pushes it beyond into December 1999.
It will come to them in May, George. I'll predict that.
All right. There is also a theory that was put forward yesterday in an LA Times editorial. I'll bring that up with George Stephanopoulos when we come back in just a moment. And we're back with former independent counsel Michael Zeldin, National Journal contributor Stuart Taylor, and former senior advisor to President Clinton, George Stephanopoulos. Yesterday, George, the LA Times put forward a scenario under which the independent counsel goes ahead with a prosecution or getting an indictment before the grand jury against Monica Lewinsky and then prosecuting Monica Lewinsky. And under that theory, the president could be named as an unindicted co-conspirator. The advantage is, of course, is the trial will probably take those 8 months, get us through the election of '98. Monica Lewinsky considerably less popular than President Clinton. What do you think?
Too clever by half. It does have the advantage of turning Clinton into Nixon in the public mind, but I think it would be hard for Ken Starr to get away with it. On top of that, there's another ruling about to come from a judge, Ted, and that's whether or not Monica Lewinsky actually already has a deal with Ken Starr for some kind of immunity. If the judge says she does, then Ken Starr loses that avenue.
Now, Stuart Taylor said just a moment ago that this is all going to go before Congress by end of May, you said, Stuart?
I'd put it by the middle of May.
Middle of May. What do you think of that, George?
If that happens, I think Congress is going to try to find a way to have some kind of deliberations where they can look at the evidence without calling it impeachment proceedings long enough to get it beyond the election. With one caveat, Ted, and this is what none of us know. What evidence does Ken Starr have? If it's very, very strong, all bets are off, and even though this is the best day of the last year for the president, he could be in a tougher position.
But Michael Zeldin, your conviction is that there just isn't that kind of evidence.
Well, from what we know, we're not in the grand jury. We don't know what Ken Starr has developed. What we do know is the president has denied it, Vernon Jordan has denied it, Monica Lewinsky is standing by her deposition. The prospect of indicting Monica Lewinsky for lying on tapes using her mother and Linda Tripp as the evidence against her seems to me a wholly unfathomable thing for Ken Starr to be doing. And I don't think that he would want to be in that position.
There has been, and again I refer back to our ABC poll tonight, there has been clearly some erosion, George, in the president's position in the sense that a substantial majority, I believe it was over 60% of those polled, now are convinced that the president has engaged in a pattern of sexual misconduct. Now, put that into the context of the economy slipping a little bit, unemployment going up, inflation going up. Were that to happen, do you see danger signs here?
I do, Ted. I think you've hit the nail on the head. The problem for the president is not so much the sexual charges. It would be a problem if they said he committed a crime, but it's the next big crisis. And people will be asking, when he's being tested, can he be believed? And we just don't know the answer to that yet.
See, but that's the danger, and that was what was wrong about the Supreme Court decision in Jones versus Clinton, that the case allowed to be going forward caused the president to suffer, if you will, this credibility erosion because the Jones lawyers were allowed to, I think quite scandalously, present evidence which would never be admissible in a court of law, which the court deemed to be irrelevant to her lawsuit, and which has just sullied the reputation of the president unfairly in a way that he cannot respond to.
And you'll be hearing that from the White House.
A little point I'd like to make about that evidence. There are at least 12 witnesses who I can count whose public testimony under oath now contradicts the president's public testimony under oath. Some of us think that the question whether the president has lied under oath is not merely a scandal, but is something that should be taken seriously and considered and confronted by the American people. If they want to say we don't care if he lies under oath, so be it.
No, actually, the American people is not saying that. And again, the poll indicates that the American public takes that quite seriously. And if it can be shown that the president committed perjury or was engaged in obstruction of justice, and George, I'll leave the final word to you on this, that people do seem to take very seriously.
Oh, and they will. There's no question about it. But I think that Michael's onto something. Whenever you have new charges now coming at the president, the White House is going to have something like a Chicken Little strategy. They're going to say, remember Paula Jones. Everybody said before the sky was falling, the president had a ton of garbage poured on him, and it didn't even go to a jury. Keep that in mind the next time you hear a charge against the president.
George Stephanopoulos, Michael Zeldin, Stuart Taylor, thank you all very much. Good to have you with us. I'll be back in a moment. And finally, a program note. Tomorrow on Nightline, as Congress begins its Easter recess, I'll be talking with the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich. That's our report for tonight. Be sure to watch Good Morning America tomorrow for the latest overnight developments. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
If you'd like a transcript or video cassette of this or any other edition of Nightline, please dial 1-800-CALL-ABC. Nightline is always on with abcnews.com, on the web or AOL.
Nightline has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source. ABC News, now always on.